Hello and welcome to Frontrunner Motorsport. The former Brabham team have one of the most interesting histories of any race team. Really, it's all over the place. From the highs of championship wins to the lows of going out of business mid-season, Brabham did it all. And they have an interesting cast of characters who raced for the team in their 30 years in Formula 1. In the last few years, we have looked at every Ferrari driver, every Williams driver, and every McLaren driver in Formula 1 ever. Now, for the first time, a team that has been long dead, and therefore there won't be any new drivers to add to this list. This is the main Brabham team only, or the main Brabham team known by its 300 other names, such as Motor Racing Developments, Team Fina, Martini Racing, and so on. This list does not include the many customer Brabham entries that went alongside over the years. So it starts with the team founded by Jack Brabham in 1962 to the team that died halfway through 1992. This is the list of every Brabham Formula 1 driver ever, from worst to best. So make sure you subscribe to the channel and let's jump right into the first 14 of 42 Brabham drivers. Number 42, Giorgio Francia. We start with a couple of drivers who never actually got to race for the team. Italian Giorgio Francia was the 1974 German Formula 3 champion, and despite not accomplishing much beyond that, he was given a Brabham for the 1977 Italian Grand Prix. He was withdrawn in practice and never got to race. He would later try again in 1981 for Osella, but failed to qualify on that occasion too. Better known as a sports car and touring car driver, Giorgio Francia spent the majority of his career as a Fiat test driver and raced Alfa Romeos and Lancias in various categories, most notably for Alfa in DTM. He never won any championships after 1974 and retired from racing in the mid-90s. Number 41, Giovanna Amati. One of the final Brabham drivers and the last female to race in Formula 1 as of 2023, as if they're any closer to getting another female on the grid. She joined a Brabham team well on the decline. She wasn't completely incapable, having spent several years racing International F3000, but she had never scored points in that series despite taking part in over 30 races. Her 3 attempts at getting onto a Formula 1 grid were a complete disaster. She spun constantly and failed to qualify, with times around 10 seconds off pole at the 3 races she entered. She was sacked and replaced by future champion Damon Hill. Amati would go on to make appearances in sports car racing, but never with any notable success. Number 40, Francois Villeneuve. The unfortunate Frenchman joined Brabham after a season with Ligier, where he scored no points but showed signs of occasional competence. His 4 appearances with Brabham in 1985 were not good. He was slow in qualifying to the point where he didn't actually qualify for Monaco, crashed out of his first start with the team, and retired from the other 2 starts. He had a massive practice crash that would lead to him retiring from Motorsport not long after his short stint with Brabham, and a one-off appearance for Renault mid-season, which is notable for a couple of reasons. It was the final time a team was allowed to run a third car in a race, and the first ever time an onboard camera was fitted to a Formula 1 car, now standard technology. These things are more interesting than Francois Villeneuve himself. Number 39, Gregor Foer. I feel like the Swiss driver has come up a lot on this channel. Not bad, seeing as he accomplished so little. The former Eurobrun driver, check out this video to hear about that disaster, joined Brabham in 1990. He only did the first 2 races and retired from both, and being replaced by David Brabham thereafter. If you look at his qualifying performances, they were maybe slightly better than David's, and he never did fail to qualify, but it was still a very bad time for the Swiss driver. He'd joined Onyx for a few races, another terrible F1 team we've looked at here, and was then done with Formula 1. Within a couple of years he was done with Motorsport. Number 38, Giancarlo Beghetti. The last Formula 1 driver to win on their debut all the way back in 1961 for FISA. The Italian did 1 race for Brabham towards the end of his time in Formula 1 at the 1965 Italian Grand Prix. It was only 12 laps before his engine blew, and his racing career would be over within a couple of years of this appearance. Number 37, David Brabham. The son of the founder made his triumphant return to the family team in 1991. It was no longer the team his dad had founded so long previously. David Brabham had won the British Formula 3 Championship and the Macau Grand Prix in 1989 and was a perfect fit for Brabham in 1990. The car was slow and unreliable. David Brabham only finished 1 race in 14 attempts, 15th at the French Grand Prix. He'd get dumped from Brabham at year's end because he was too poor, but would return to Formula 1 in 1994 with Simtek, the Brabham team a distant memory. It went about the same, however, and David transitioned to touring cars and sports car racing, where he has had great success, winning Le Mans, the American Le Mans Series, the Bathurst 1000 and Super GT. Recently, he has started his own car company, Brabham Automotive, that made a couple of very attractive cars. He took them racing and they have since gone quiet. Their website and Twitter page haven't been updated since 2021, so I don't know what the future of the Brabham name is. Probably best David Brabham stays away from Formula 1, and his brother Gary should stay away from kids. Number 36, Erik van der Poel. I am a big fan of Erik van der Poel, but his time in Formula 1 was depressingly short. In his 29 entries in Formula 1, Van der Poel failed to qualify 24 times, but he did almost finish second with the Modena team in 1991 and was one of the few starters in Brabham's final season, finishing 13th at the opening round at South Africa. The Belgian would go on to have a decent touring car and sports car career, with wins in the Spanish Touring Car Championship and in his class at Le Mans, but it was never the F1 career the 1987 DTM champion and runner-up in the International F3000 Series in 1990 should have had. Also, he was pants in the British touring cars. Number 35, Teddy Pile. Another Belgian, and this one only took part in one Grand Prix, the two-time European F5000 champion, Teddy Pile. He wasn't much slower than the normal two Brabham drivers, Ricky von Opel and Carlos Reutemann, and when they retired from the race, Teddy Pile was the last Brabham involved, finishing 17th, 4 laps down. A couple of years later, he would attempt to qualify for a very sick BRM team, and would make multiple appearances at Le Mans with no great success, and also failed to qualify for the Indy 500 several times. His racing career would finally end in the late 80s. Number 34, Larry Perkins. The Australian raced some weird cars in Formula 1. He debuted with the failed Chris Amon team and the Amon chassis, failing to qualify in 1974. In 1976, he raced for the Dutch Boro team, before getting to do the last 3 races of the year in the Martini-sponsored Brabham. He finished 17th once and retired from the final 2 races. He qualified within a second of experienced teammate Carlos Pace at the last 2 races. In 1977, he'd make his final F1 appearances with BRM and Team Surtees, who would both be soon disappearing into the void. Larry Perkins would have his greatest successes in Australia, winning the Bathurst 1000 6 times between 1977 and 2003. Number 33, Manfred Vinkle. Manfred of the famous Vinkle racing family had a few seasons in Formula 1, failing to qualify for Arrows in 1980, followed by 3 seasons with ATS from 1982 to 1984. He filled in for 1 race for the Brabham team at the 1984 Portuguese Grand Prix, finishing 10th. In 1985, he had raced for the Skull Bandit team, but was sadly killed in a sports car race at Motorsport. 22 years later, his son Marcus Vinkle would make a sole appearance in Formula 1, as well as Manfred's brother Joachim, the 1993 British Touring Car Champion. Number 32, Richard Roberts. One of the most unremarkable Formula 1 drivers ever, Richard Roberts did not accomplish much on his way up to Formula 1. Racing in the British and French Formula 3 series, he took a couple of wins and finished runner-up in the British F3 in 1973. That is not a Formula 1 worthy CV, but he paid for a seat with the Brabham team for 1974. To be fair, he wasn't quick, but he did finish 2 of his 3 starts. He didn't have enough money to continue and was dropped for the rest of the season. He'd turn up in sports car events in Formula 2, but his career was done after 1976. 4 years of racing and 3 F1 starts. That's not bad. Number 31, Ricky von Opel. The great-grandson of the founder of the Opal car company and now a Buddhist monk who has not been heard from except by some close acquaintances. Ricky von Opel may be slightly eccentric. The American-born son of a German represented Liechtenstein in Formula 1, also having a very short racing career, partaking between 1971 and 1974. He won the British F3 Championship in 1972, raced a few times for Ensign in Formula 1 in 1973, and joined Brabham in 1974, taking over from Richard Roberts for 6 races. He didn't have much more success, failing to qualify for the street circuit of Monaco and later Dijon. He'd make 4 appearances, finishing 9th in Sweden and Belgium. After that, he converted to Buddhism and went off to be a monk somewhere. Number 30, Chris Irwin. Whilst Chris Irwin only made 1 appearance for Brabham, he did finish 7th, so he almost scored points. He made his Formula 1 debut for Brabham at the British Grand Prix in 1966, qualifying in the midfield and surviving the race to finish 7th, 2 laps down off winner Jack Brabham, also in a Brabham. He'd make some appearances for Reg Parnell in 1967, but his career was ended after a horrifying crash in a Ford P68, practicing for the Nürburgring 1000 km race. He's still alive but is rarely seen in motorsport circles these days. Number 29, Damon Hill. The final ever Brabham driver, future Formula 1 world champion Damon Hill made his Formula 1 debut for Brabham in 1992. This was 20 years after his father Graham raced for the team. We will get to him later. For Damon, it was a pretty miserable experience. The dying Brabham team couldn't give Damon a lot and he failed to qualify for 6 of his 8 entries. The 2 races he did get to race in, the British and Hungarian Grand Prix, he finished 11th and 16th but was 4 laps down in both and around 5 to 7 seconds a lap off the pace. He later raced for Williams, Arrows and Jordan and now turns up on Formula 1 programming every now and again. He's lucky Brabham didn't kill his career. So they were the first 14 drivers on the list, the worst 14 to race for Brabham. From future champions like Damon Hill to people who did very little like Richard Roberts. It is a strange mix of drivers, the result of accepting any paid driver willing to give you a handout as you desperately try and survive. A lot of these drivers are part of Brabham's later history. So in the final 2 parts we will look at some of the best drivers in Formula 1 history who raced for the team in the 60s, 70s and 80s. Subscribe because you don't want to miss out. Leave your thoughts down below. Would you put anyone in a different position? Was I too harsh on David Brabham? Let me know. Thank you for watching and have a good one.